Not Completely Alone by aSintobeRin on AO3. Peter didn't feel it when the train hit him. He felt it 7 seconds later when the consciousness returned, and even then he was more concerned about getting off the front of the train, holy shit, than the burning of his chest or the marching band playing in his skull. Getting off the train without dying was tricky. Peter was sticky, sure, but blood was still slippery, and the double vision made him miss footholds as he crept along the side of the engine. More than once, Peter had to pause, clinging tightly to the train as he waited for the world to stop spinning. He didn't question it. The train. Peter wasn't sure exactly what just happened. Survival took precedence in his mind. He didn't even question the uneasy feeling in the pit of his stomach, didn't question the blood in his mouth or the tunnel's walls zipping past him. Or was he zipping past the walls? Semantics were a moot point, unfortunately. Eventually, way too long, Peter managed his way to a train car with a door. He didn't bother gently tugging it open like he did with his bedroom door, rather allowing his freaky strength to break the lock, nearly taking off the door altogether. As Peter's feet hit solid ground, all the adrenaline drained from him, and suddenly he was uncomfortably aware of every cut and bruise on his skin. His knees buckled from under him, and it took everything in the hero's power to keep from collapsing right there on the carpet. And even hanging onto the handy safety bar on the wall, Peter could tell something was seriously wrong with his right leg. Something had to be broken or dislocated. It was a battle just to walk. One more step, he silently pleaded with his feet. One more step. That was a lie, of course. It took Peter approximately 18 one more steps to find a passenger car and then another 4 to drop into a seat. As he allowed gravity to drag him down, the teen pulled the mask from his head. Identity be damned. Something, be it spit, blood, or puke, had drenched the inside of his mask. The wool, or whatever the thing was made of, absorbing everything it came into contact with. The resulting effect made Peter feel like he was drowning. Definitely not cool. However, taking off the mask didn't do much for Peter. His chest was still on fire, ribs shattered from the train's initial impact. His lungs weren't doing so hot either. Peter felt agonizing coughs rip from his throat as he desperately tried to get in a decent breath. Everything just hurt. The hero had been in a scrape. The hero had been in a scrape or two. He'd gotten crushed by a building, thrown into a lake, nearly pulled apart trying to keep a boat afloat. Generally painful stuff all around. But this was different from all the others. Because this time, it was all his fault. From start to finish. He'd given Beck the glasses. He'd told Beck about his friends knowing his secret identity. He'd done this to himself. And to make it worse, Peter's vision was darkening, the wheezy half-breaths not enough to keep his brain from shorting out. His consciousness slipped away as his brain provided one last thought. To make it worse, this time, there's no Iron Man to bail me out. It was late in Officer Joanne DeGroot's shift when he found the boy with the mask. The call had been normal enough. The dispatcher had mentioned a straggler on the C train. Nothing particularly surprising. The homeless often took residence in empty train cars. Joanne never cared for kicking the less fortunate out of the only shelter they could find, but it was part of the job, so within 10 minutes he was at the train yard. The yard supervisor met Joanne at the gate, quickly leading the officer to the interior of the nondescript passenger car. Found him on my last check, the supervisor explained. But he won't leave. Joanne approached the man. Kid? He looked young enough to be a kid. You can't be here, he warned. The kid frowned, slumped in his seat. He mouthed something, but didn't attempt to explain himself or obey. Joanne noticed the blood on the boy's cheek and the way his eyelids drooped. What's your name? The boy forced his eyes open, struggling to straighten up. Peter. His voice was low, but distinctly American. It struck the officer as strange, to say the least. Their homeless population didn't include many North Americans. Peter, Joanne said, what are you doing here? I'm not going to leave, Peter mumbled, words almost cement with their rigidity. I'm not going to leave you. Think we should take him out to the hospital? The supervisor suggested. Officer DeGroot considered it. The young man wasn't making the most sense, but he seemed to be okay for the most part. His chest was rising and his pulse was still intact. At the very least, he was alive. Drunk off his ass, most likely, but alive nonetheless. No, Joanne declared. He looks okay to me. Plus, he really didn't want to get an ambulance involved. Not since he got in that fight with the paramedic, Lawrence. The man was a jerk, and quite honestly would end up making Joanne take the perpetrator in the squad anyway. Peter, you need to leave the car, or I'll have to arrest you for trespassing. He kept his tone light and conversational, like the officer was doing Peter a favor by not arresting him immediately. And he was, in a way, but it was unlikely that Peter saw it that way. Don't touch me, Peter hissed, eyes not quite seeing, expression not quite there. The officer noticed an odd black mask on the seat beside Peter. He stuffed it in his pocket before reaching for one of the boy's arms. If you don't leave now, I'll arrest you. The kindness fled his voice. But before Officer DeGroot could touch Peter's arm, the kid's hand shot out, crushing Joanne's wrist. The officer yelped frantically, feeling bones pop and snap. The train yard supervisor rushed to help as the two struggled against the boy's inhuman grip. But it was impossible. His fingers were like a vice, desperate. Officer DeGroot shouted for the supervisor to step back before using his free hand to activate his taser. The boy's muscles spasmed, and he let go, dropping to the ground. Yeah, Joanne breathed, holding his injured arm protectively. You're definitely under arrest. He was falling. That was the first thing Peter's body registered, the first thing it chose to be aware of, and reflexes kicked in. He woke up groggy and not quite there. The room was bare, awash in warm light, and blurry through his sleep-heavy eyes. Peter blinked, struggling to recognize where he was, recognize what was going on. Noticing the orange in his peripheral, Peter looked to his left. Hi, a man in an orange bowler hat greeted cheerfully. His smile was bright and welcoming and exhausting just to look at. Another man beside the bowler hat man smiled, his face paint cracked as his lips curled. Peter froze. Every breath he pulled in set his ribs on fire. His heart raced in his chest. Not 1 inch of him didn't hurt. And he had no idea why. Why did he ache? Who was this man? Where was he? What happened? Municipal holiday facility, face paint man explained. They said they found you unconscious at the train yard? Bowler hat man smiled, impressed. Very dangerous. We gave you the shirt because you look cold. Peter jumped, jarring every hurt on him. He hadn't realized there was something sitting to his right, but the voice inches from his ear made that fact abundantly clear. And now that he was aware, the bright orange hat with the bullhorn sticking out of it seemed impossible to miss. And sure enough, an orange jersey was draped over his shoulders, covering up his dirty black t-shirt. Peter wasn't sure if he had been cold before, but he wasn't now, and he supposed he had the kindness of these strangers, prisoners, to thank for it. Peter hesitated before speaking. You guys are nice. If he were in New York City, he probably wouldn't be receiving the same treatment. And, this was odd. You speak really good English, he laughed nervously. Welcome to the Netherlands, the man said in unison. The levity dropped from Peter's face. I'm in the Netherlands right now? He hoped that maybe the men were confused. You know, the men clearly dressed in Netherlands football gear. Yep, Bullhorn man confirmed. Peter couldn't remember much. He wasn't sure what had caused him to pass out, and he didn't know why he was in a jail cell, and he wasn't certain as to why he hurt so badly. But what he did know was that he had passed out in Germany. How had he... Bye, Peter said hurriedly, leaping to his feet and stumbling as he put weight on his bad leg. Oh, right, he hurt his leg, didn't he? Guard? Peter shouted, grabbing the metal bars of the cell. The guard's on the break, the bowler hat man explained pleasantly. He's probably talking to his wife. Yeah, facepaint man agreed. She's pregnant. Bullhorn man's face lit up. Oh, yeah? Peter stopped paying attention, grabbing the padlock and snapping the body free from the shackle. He slid the cell doors bolt out of frame and hurried toward the exit. Then something caught his eye, and he couldn't help but backtrack to look closer. Yeah, the guard spoke into his phone, face completely obscured by Peter's black woolen mask. Things were starting to come back to him, because, right, his mask. The one thing he'd bled or spit or puked on, and the guard was wearing it. Peter decided not to think too hard about that one, jogging to the exit, luck be damned. Of course, when he stepped out of the holding facility, he expected to find buildings or a road, or at least people, but definitely not a... Bleh. A goat belted in Peter's ear, head butting his chest. I really can't catch a break today, he thought, completely unable to speak from the hot spikes of pain between his ribs. Another moment longer, and he'd noticed the damp hay on the cobblestone, the chickens pecking at cracks in the ground, and the fantastic chatter of his off to his left. It was quaint and quiet and inhabited, which was all he really cared about. So Peter collected himself and turned left, slipping the orange jersey over his head. He must have made a sorry sight, limping hurriedly, face bloodied and one arm protecting his ribs from any nearby goats. But Peter had a mission, so no matter how many livestock attacked him, he was determined to keep moving. Gotta find a phone. The narrow road opened up to a small plaza, dotted with farmer market stands. People chattered and milled about while children chased after pigs and sheep. Peter zeroed in on a middle-aged man in overalls. Peter muttered, scraping his foot against the cobblestone in a sorry attempt to get the miniature off of it. Excuse me, sir? Yup. The man didn't look up from his cell. Can I borrow your phone? Yep, take her. He placed it firmly in Peter's palm. Peter couldn't believe his luck. The first person he asked was happy to lend his phone. He definitely wasn't in New York anymore. Everyone is so nice here, Peter said under his breath, almost in awe. His thumbs flew across the keypad as he began dialing the number. Wait. Peter turned away from the man who loaned his phone, rapidly spamming backspace. That wasn't... Mr. Stark couldn't stop thinking about it. Okay, so who did Peter have? Who could help him in this situation? Happy. Peter dialed Happy's number, hoping he had remembered it correctly. Happy's number was in his contacts, okay? Why would he need to memorize it? It's not like he knew he was going to get hit by a train in Germany and lose his phone and... Hello? Hey, Peter said in a rush, surprised that Happy had even picked up for an unknown international number. And then Peter realized that he didn't have a good way to explain it, so he didn't. I messed up. I need a ride. But Happy didn't hesitate. Where are you? It sounded like he was already moving, already trying to get to Peter. Where am I? Peter parroted, suddenly realizing that he had neglected that little detail. The Netherlands is a pretty big location. The teen looked back at the man in overalls. Where am I, sir? The man frowned. Breckelblogdy. Peter took a heavy pause to think about that one. He sounded it out in his head, tried to attach a phonetic spelling to it. Brooka land something? Hang on. Peter removed the phone from his ear, holding it out to the man in the overalls. Can you say that into the... The man got the message. Hey, it's Brokup op Langdig. The man smiled. Yep, no problem. Peter took the phone back. Thanks, he breathed, nodding to the man, and then to Happy. Did you get that? Happy chewed on his lip, scanning the ground below for somewhere to land. He told the kid to find the fields or an airstrip or somewhere he could land the jet. A quick Google search told him there wasn't much in Breckelblogdy, but they did have something in abundance. Tulip fields. It felt sacrilegious and just a bit stereotypical to land on top of a giant field of yellow, pink, and orange, but Happy didn't see many alternatives. He tried not to think too hard about the poor farmer who would have to deal with the aftermath. The second the jet touched the ground, Happy was up and hurrying to the stairs. He didn't know what Peter had done, just that he'd messed up, but if it was anything like his usual activities, he was likely in serious danger. Time was of the essence. Peter seemed to agree with the sentiment. Happy spotted the familiar figure in black and neon orange limping toward the jet. He looked worse for wear, didn't feel strong enough. Peter, are you okay? Happy called. Happy? Is that you? Peter's voice was tight and just a bit on the frantic side. The question struck him as odd because, no, Peter, I'm just some random guy who decided to land his private jet in a tulip field in a Dutch village the size of a postage stamp. Is it? Yeah, of course it's me, he shouted back, feeling the unease grow in his chest. Stop, Peter yelled, one hand out in warning. Happy stood back in his tracks. Tell me something only you would know. Peter's stance was defensive, on edge, and small. So small. What had happened to this kid? Only I would know. Happy racked his mind. Sure, he knew some of Peter's biggest secrets, Spider-Man being the crown jewel of them, but he wasn't the only one who knew that. Happy knew about the plane crash, about the old woman with the churro, about... Remember when we went to Germany? Happy asked, not really wanting an answer. You pay per view to video in your room? They didn't list the titles, but I could tell it was an adult film based on the price on the front desk. You didn't know how I... Okay, fine, it's you, stop. The words spilled from Peter's mouth, desperate to get Happy to shut up. He limped forward, breathing heavily and clearly moving as fast as he could. The second he was within arm's reach, Peter wrapped Happy in a hug. So good to see you, he panted. Happy hugged him back tentatively, unable to shake the fear in his heart. Peter, you're gonna have to tell me what the hell's going on here. Peter didn't reply at first, frozen in the hug. And then whatever adrenaline was running through him wore off. He sagged in Happy's hold, one knee giving out. Happy grunted, struggling to catch Peter. Kid? He slung Peter's arm over his shoulder, doing his best to ignore it when the kid grunted in pain. The hell did you do? Ow. Peter pushed himself away from Happy, then hit the dirt. Happy knelt at his side, worry furrowing his brows. Hey, talk to me, Happy ordered. Peter nodded, an arm bracing his ribs as he caught his breath. Yeah, I think I busted my ribs. How? Happy was careful, supporting Peter around the waist and under one arm. They just had to get up the stairs, get in the jet, but those steps were starting to look like a mountain. Peter's breath hitched, but he forced himself forward anyway. Hit by a train. I think they're healing, but... Happy tried not to file those words away for a moment. Had to set them aside to concentrate on keeping Peter from tripping over the steps. Easy, he warned. Take it slow. Don't... Peter's arms tightened around his ribs, jaw clenched. Don't want to take it slow. He paused to conquer step number 4. I want to get it done. And I want you to survive the experience, Happy grit out, helping Peter up the last few steps and to a chair in the cabin. There was a moment of stillness, a moment of what now, and then, you got hit by a what? Wow, Peter muttered, wincing through the laugh. That was delayed. It's not funny, Happy insisted. What the hell happened? He was moving now, closing up the stairs, getting the jet in the air and making loops around the field until Happy figured out where they were going. Whether this was a hospital trip or a home with schooling trip. It was Beck, Peter lamented from the cabin. Happy hurried back to him with a first aid kit. I gave him Edith, and he dipped his head, unable to look Happy in the eye. Nope, Happy insisted, pulling out a pen light. Brood later. Let me check your pupils now. Either Peter understood or didn't care enough to resist. He looked up, and Happy flickered the pen light over and away from Peter's eyes. So you gave him Edith? Happy repeated. Yeah, I don't know. He tried them on, and in that moment, I saw Mr. Stark. And then I thought about the next Iron Man, and there's no way that could be me, but maybe Beck could? He hissed in pain as Happy pulled down his collar, blood smearing across his back. Yeah, that'll need stitches. Happy pulled thread and gauze from the kit and slid the needles into Peter's shoulder. Peter winced and grunted. Thought you had super strength. Happy didn't slow, continuing his steady stitch work. Still hurts. Another wince. Peter pressed his knuckles to his forehead. Happy, come on, we don't have time for this. Just relax, Happy ordered. He could feel the tension in Peter's muscles. He'd heard it in the kid's tone. Peter endured another stitch. Another after that. Just a few more, Happy assured him. Oh my God! Peter slammed his fist on the side of the jet. Happy! Relax. Happy had dealt with Tony's complaining for ages, but this felt distinctly different. Distinctly Peter. Don't tell me to relax, Happy. Peter stood up and spun to face Happy. The needle was ripped from Happy's fingers and dangled from Peter's shoulder. How can I relax when I messed up so bad? I trusted Beck. I thought he was my friend. I gave him the only thing Mr. Stark left for me, and now he's going to kill my friends and half of Europe. So please, please, don't tell me to relax. His knees buckled under him, and he sank into another seat before Happy could try to catch him. Then he leaned forward, running a stressed hand through his hair. He breathed once. Twice. Happy waited. He nearly said something, but then Peter spoke up. I'm sorry, Happy, the kid mumbled pathetically. I'm sorry, I shouldn't shout. He sat up, took a breath, as if to speak, and then let out a silent laugh, like he wasn't sure what to say next. He took another breath. I just really miss him. Happy pushed down the lump in his throat. Yeah, I miss him too. Peter shook his head, looked down at his hands. Everywhere I go, I see his face. And the whole world is asking who's going to be the next Iron Man. His fingers curled in his hair. He sniffled, sat up in a sudden, frustrated gesture. I don't know if that's me, Happy. I'm not Iron Man. And God, he was right. Happy knew that better than anyone. Happy's heart reminded him of that every day. Happy shook his head, searching for the words, but the simplest proved to be the most effective. You're not Iron Man. You're never going to be Iron Man. Peter looked away, pain and fear and grief warping his features. Nobody could live up to Tony. Happy said, not even Tony. Peter didn't react. He was still withdrawn, still aching. Happy wasn't good with pep talks, so he didn't give one. Peter didn't want one. What he needed, what he wanted, was the truth, and Happy was well suited for that. Tony was my best friend. Happy sighed, but he didn't look away. He meant every word he said, and he was a mess. That caught Peter's attention. Wide, red eyes shot up, watching Happy with surprise, disbelief. He second-guessed everything he did. He was all over the place. The one thing that he didn't second-guess was picking you. Peter's mouth drew a grim line, still hanging on to Happy's every word. I don't think Tony would have done what he did if he didn't know you were going to be here after he was gone. Silence lapsed. Peter hid his face. Happy watched him anyway. Now you're going to let me finish your shoulder before you bleed all over the seats. Peter looked up. Any other time, he'd look embarrassed. He'd jump up and apologize profusely for staining the upholstery. But today he just nodded, expression frozen, halfway between grief and numbness. Happy returned to the task at hand. In Peter's frustration, he ripped quite a few stitches, so Happy begrudgingly fixed those too. So, your friends are in trouble, you're all alone, and your tech is missing. What are you going to do about it? I'm going to kick Beck's ass. That's the spirit.